This episode of GunBlog VarietyCast brought to you by lawofselfdefense.com. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to learn about your state's self-defense laws. Sign up for one of their online or in-person seminars or buy the book Law of Self-Defense and get 10% off when you use the discount code VARIETY at checkout. That's lawofselfdefense.com/variety. Sit back, relax, and take a ride with us on the GunBlog VarietyCast, episode 51. Welcome back to the GunBlog VarietyCast. I'm your host, Sean from NC GunBlog, and with me today is Adam from Guns, Cars, Tech Blog. How are you doing, Adam?
Well, the vision in my right eye kind of took a dive off a cliff last week, but other than that, I got a hate mail.
Ooh, hate mail. What do you got?
Oh. So I got this from Adam and Nash. I'm sure that's his real name.
Yeah.
I heard you had not received any hate mail, so fuck you, you f***ing fuck. The show is the GunBlog VarietyCast. You haven't posted anything on your blog since May. It's August, by the way. The former GunBlog VarietyCast. You disgust me, posing as a gun blogger. You shut your festering gob, you tit. Your type makes me puke. You vacuous, toffee-nosed, malodorous pervert. Brita hasn't posted anything in years. Maybe you can get her on your show.
Shut your festering gob, you tit! Your type makes me puke. You vacuous, toffee-nosed, malodorous pervert!
And that audio was actually included as an MP3 in the email. So, good job.
Okay, well, I was going to give it a 3, but since he included the audio, I'm going to give it a 4.
Out of
10. So the rest of the listeners, can you do better than that? Send your hate mail to wizardpc@gunscarstech.com.
Since apparently I am not blogging. That's the only thing that email address is going to be used for from now on.
Apparently. Well, let's get right into it with the Tactical Dog and Fitness Report. 26.8 dog walking miles, and I think I've either got malaria or I'm going through menopause.
Menopause?
Well, you know how women they complain about like heat flashes and they get all sweaty and the power surges and stuff?
Right.
It's either that or malaria, because I'm just like, all of a sudden start sweating for no reason.
Do you think maybe it's like the 900% humidity?
No, I'm in the house.
Oh.
Laying on the couch. My head starts sweating. I wake up. I was reading a book and then I decided I was going to take a nap. And I wake up and the back of my head's all sweated into the pillow. It's really gross. I'm like, it's 70 degrees in the house. The AC is blasting. What is going on?
Yeah, I set my AC to like 66 at night, and that still happens to me.
Ugh.
Every night.
It's gross.
So, speaking of that, I'm barely sleeping. The baby was up from like 2 to 3:30 this morning, and that's not abnormal in the last couple of weeks.
I don't know, man.
It's a season of life. It's a season of life. It's a season of life.
Yeah.
This will pass.
You'll get some good stories out of it later that you can torture them with when you stand up and give the speech at the wedding.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So much material to draw from.
Make sure to get one of them little flip cameras, and you can videotape everything, and then you can like splice it together at the wedding. Well, let me show you. Yeah. And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette. Today, Erin's going to talk about flooding.
Come on, every pony. It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette.
Erin, you live in Florida. They've got like 38 inches of rain in the past couple weeks. Are you underwater? Do you have to use a canoe to get the mail?
Fortunately, Sean, that's in Tampa Bay, 2 hours south and west of me in Daytona Beach. So I'm currently staying high and dry. But that's an excellent segue into talking about flooding. Now, back in episode 29, I talked about methods to waterproof your house, and of course that extends to flood protection. But I was recently asked, what do you do if your car is swept away by floodwaters? And that's a very relevant question considering the pictures I've seen coming out of Tampa. There's one in particular in the show notes showing an interstate exit ramp ending in what looks like a river with just a line of cars backed up and all the drivers no doubt wondering, well, what do I do now? But these folks are demonstrating the first rule of driving through floods. Don't. Just don't. 6 inches of water will reach the floorboards of most vehicles, which can cause stalling or loss of steering control. 12 inches of water will float practically any car, and it exerts 500 pounds of lateral force. 2 feet of water can pick up trucks and SUVs and carry them away.
So, as long as the water's only 5 inches deep, I can just drive right through, right?
Well, in theory, sure, but how good are you at eyeballing the depth of floodwater, which is usually opaque and flowing quickly? I mean, you might be fine, but maybe your calculation is off, which means that water gets into your engine and it stalls out. So now you're stuck there. And pretty soon the water rises to 12 inches and floats your car away. Or maybe the water has eroded the roadway and there's a big hole in the middle of the street that you can't see. I mean, you didn't need that suspension anyway, did you? So, no, I'm sorry, while there are some resources on the web on how to drive through floodwaters, in good conscience, I can't recommend anything so risky. The best advice for not getting swept away is don't drive through floodwaters in the first place. Now, fortunately, that's pretty easy. Pay attention to barricades or caution flooding signs and don't drive past them. And if you come upon a flooded section of road and you don't know how deep it is or can't see the bottom, just do as the National Weather Service says and turn around, don't drown.
Okay, but what happens if I misjudge things and I get swept away? Do I stay in the car? Should I leave?
Well, this is one of those would you rather be shot or stabbed questions, because any current strong enough to float a car is definitely strong enough to sweep you away, because it only takes 6 inches of running water to knock someone off their feet. So it's not like you can just get out and walk away if the car is moving. Also, if the water is high enough, you might not be able to open the doors due to the pressure differential. You might need to climb out through the window. But on the other hand, if your car is moving along at a steady clip, then there's likely to be lots of debris in the water, and your car is likely protecting you from all sorts of nasty cuts, abrasions, and impacts. So keeping in mind that I'm not an expert here, this is what I would recommend if you happen to get swept away. Carry an exit tool in your car that can be used to break a window if you can't roll it down or if your power window's short out. Some folks like using a hammer, but that requires the ability to swing, which is an ability you might not have if you're injured or upside down or if your car is full of water. I prefer an automatic center punch tool. You just push it into the window and it will break the tempered coating and cause the glass to shatter, and then you can just easily knock the shards away with an elbow or a gloved hand. There's something called Rescue Me on Amazon that you can buy for about $10. Comes in a variety of colors so you can find it in an emergency. It can be attached to your seat's headrest so that no matter what happens, you can locate it quickly. And it also has a seatbelt cutter on it for added value. Now, if your car comes to a halt or if you think you can safely make it to shore, then do so. If your car is caught by branches or other debris, you definitely want to get out. In canoeing, these are known as strainers. They will hold you in place while the water pummels you until you drown. Now, if you do get swept away while trying to get out of the car, do your best to keep your feet pointed downstream so that they absorb the impact of anything you hit rather than something more valuable like your head. But again, all of this can be avoided by simply not being caught in floodwater in the first place. Don't drive through it, and if your car gets stalled out, abandon it and seek high ground before it floats away.
All right, Aaron. It was good to talk with you. See you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
If you'd like to read more from Erin, check out her blog, lurkingrhythmically.blogspot.com.
You know, Erin said that she had gotten a request for this one. It was actually me. So there's a picture in the show notes of a washed out road, and I had sent that to her because basically what had happened was there was a guy who was killed going to work at like 3 o'clock in the morning. He couldn't see that the road was washed out because the road was washed out under the asphalt. There was actually a culvert that had been washed out. The asphalt was just fine until his car drove over it.
Ooh.
Yeah. So his car literally just fell in, and he was swept away. So I said, I bet Erin might have some good ideas here. And I think the Rescue Me tool is probably a good idea.
Right. I have one of those, It's tied to the headrest so that it just sort of sits on the passenger seat. You can grab it, cut seatbelt with it. I'm not too worried about getting trapped in the car myself. But if I have to access a vehicle that's crashed on the side of the road, you're not getting through that tempered glass without a tool. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever tried to hit a piece of tempered glass with a hammer, but the hammer will bounce.
Yeah, and you're not getting through the windshield.
No.
Without an axe, you're not coming through that windshield.
Yeah, the windshield is actually 2 pieces of glass with some plastic in the middle.
Yeah, but the side glass, you're going to punch your way through it. That's not going to happen. No. Felons behaving badly. Fugitive facing 40 charges surrenders after standoff with Ashboro police. Dateline Ashboro. A man with dozens of charges against him surrendered to police Friday evening after a standoff that lasted approximately 4 hours. Suspect 21 is in the custody of Albemarle police following a standoff in Ashboro. On Friday, Albemarle police notified Ashboro police that suspect might be in the city. Ashboro police were also advised that he might be in possession of multiple weapons alleged to have been stolen over the past few days. Albemarle and Ashboro police responded to 703 East Presnell Street.
Stop by and say hi.
At about 1:30 p.m. to look for suspect. Upon arrival, suspect barricaded himself in the apartment. Officers tried to chase suspect but were denied entry, Ashboro police said. At that time, Ashboro police SWAT was called and the apartment was surrounded. Hostage negotiators from Ashboro police as well as Randolph County Sheriff's Office responded and attempted to start a dialogue with the suspect. After approximately 4 hours, suspect exited the apartment and was arrested without incident. According to WSOC, Albemarle police have at least 40 charges against suspect, and there may be more as the investigation unfolds. Suspect is accused of breaking into 19 homes and stealing valuables in recent weeks. Albemarle police say suspect is believed to have stolen TVs, jewelry, guns, electronics, gaming systems, and more. Albemarle police said that suspect was on probation and was wearing an ankle monitor but cut it off, making it difficult for them to locate him. Police think suspect had help and didn't commit all of these break-ins alone, but are still investigating.
So 40 charges, right? And barricaded and SWAT and all that stuff. But I'm sure that if he'd had to try to pass a background check before stealing those guns,
right?
Universal background check. That one more charge of taking possession of a firearm without having a background check, that would have stopped him.
We actually have to have a permit from the sheriff to take possession of a firearm. I'm wondering if they're going to charge him with that. Do you think?
Probably not.
Probably not. And you know what? If you can't charge a guy like that, who are you going to charge?
Right?
Suspect, larceny from person, 1/16/2012, felon, class H. Larceny over 200. 12/5/2013, felon, class H. Felony breaking and entering, 12/5/2013, felon, class H. And post-release CRV, 8/7/14, felon. A CRV is a version of like a probation revocation. You don't get your probation revoked, but you get up to 90 days in jail for some reason that they decide that you're not meeting your probation requirements. So they toss you back in the slammer to
put you in timeout.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's timeout. This week on Foreign Policy for Grownups, Nikki talks about existential threats. What are they? And why do we care? Nikki, I think we have a national security problem.
Oh, just one?
A pretty basic one. Seems no one can agree on what constitutes an existential threat to the United States. The president, members of his administration, his top military brass, they all seem to have different definitions of what an existential threat is. I'm thinking this is a problem.
Yeah, indeed. I think you might be right. It is a problem, and a big one at that. If your commander-in-chief and your military leaders can't even agree on what the basic existential threats are to this nation, it's going to be pretty impossible to develop an effective foreign and military policy, right? So maybe the first thing they need to do is actually define what an existential threat is.
So what is it?
Well, if you break the phrase apart, it's a threat to the very existence of our nation, a threat to our fundamental values, our population, our infrastructure, that threatens to forever change or destroy the United States as we know it. It's a grave danger, to be sure, and the question really becomes, how many existential threats do we face, and what are they? We can't formulate an effective foreign policy and national security strategy without answering that basic question, because a wrong answer means we're focusing our resources and our military might on the wrong enemy, freeing the correct enemy up to actually, destroy us. So the problem is the use of the phrase has become this commonplace kind of catch-all used by top brass to describe anything in their area of operations, or AO, that could be viewed as a threat in order to get money. Seriously, it's all about money. Mexico border security, existential threat. Failing societies in Latin America, drug use and trade, existential threat. Russia? Yep, you guessed it, existential threat. And what will cure those threats?
More money, more money, more money.
Yep, more money. So look, I'm not saying that the gangs and the drugs and the money laundering that are pretty much routine in U.S. Southern Command's AO aren't threats. They are indeed. They're threats to the U.S. financial system. They're threats to the well-being of our citizens, to our property, etc. I get it. But a fundamental threat to our very existence? I dare say Southcon's General Kelly, who testified last year that the collapsing societies and associated drugs and illegal immigrant flows into the United States represent an existential threat to the United States, might have been inflating the threat just a bit. Is Russia an existential threat to the United States? Well, one could argue that given that they possess enough nukes to obliterate us from this earth, that, yeah, they are. But the question is really, do we really assess that Vladimir Putin will use said nukes to destroy us? Frankly, Putin is somewhat a kleptomaniac, and a power-hungry one at that. A book I read recently by journalist Masha Gessen called The Man Without a Face, a really fascinating look into Putin, describes him as someone afflicted with pleonexia, which is the insatiable desire to have what rightfully belongs to others. And it's witnessed by his theft of that Super Bowl ring, if you remember that incident, and also his theft of a big glass of vodka in the shape of a Kalashnikov. He may be all of the above. He may be a kleptomaniac, and he may be afflicted with pleonexia, but at the same time, I think he's also smart enough to realize that without the United States, his Russia can't claim to be a victim, that without the United States, Russia will lose its primary boogeyman, its primary opponent. It's pretty simple, and obviously there are other reasons why Russia won't launch a nuclear attack on the United States, including the fact that Putin does consider Russia's integration into the world structures kind of important. But overall, I doubt Putin presents that existential threat to the very existence of the United States. I seriously doubt he's going to launch a nuclear attack on us. Now, in 2011, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, named cyber as an existential threat to the United States. DNI Clapper this year also cited cyber threats. And this year, both Vice President Biden and National Security Advisor Susan Rice, well, they just said the U.S. didn't really face any existential threats at all.
None? What about terrorism?
Yeah, well, many will argue that terrorism is in fact an existential threat to the United States. After all, it's intricately clear that the 9/11 attacks changed our way of life and the very nature of the society in which we live. While several thousand people died, it can be argued that what died in a more pronounced and painful manner is our fundamental freedoms, our sense of security and safety, and our spirit. Overall, I think the definition of existential threat should also include our ability to counter it. We do have the ability to blow Russia sky high in the event of an attack, which is another reason why I doubt Putin would be crazy enough to launch a nuclear attack against us. We use a lot of tools that we have at our disposal to cut off transnational criminal organizations' access to the U.S. financial system, and while illicit actors always find their loopholes, they pose no existential threat writ large. Cyber? Now, I think that's something different. We do have this amazing agency out there with thousands of dedicated, brilliant people working on countering the cyber threats to the United States. But illicit cyber actors always seem to be a step ahead, and the fact that the national security agency is consistently vilified by the general populace and the legislators who, well, frankly, lick their collective anuses, with its resources consistently threatened by opportunistic politicians, we may be least equipped to deal with that cyber threat. Remember, cyber actors can wreak havoc from around the globe. They're able to cover their tracks. They're quick. They're intelligent. They operate in obscurity, and generally speaking, they tend to be lone actors who leverage their relationships when they do need to plus up their resources. In other words, they're harder to track, to catch, and to counter. And that makes them scarier than the drug dealers who chop people's heads off, and the Russians who invade their neighbors, and even the terrorists who threaten our way of life.
All right, Nikki. It was good to talk with you. See you again next week.
You bet. Take care.
Nikki blogs at thelibertyzone.com. Plug of the week. Well, this week, I wanted to plug a book.
A book?
Yeah, you should really read a book.
You know, I would read a book, but ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if this is on audiobook, so you could, not listen to it while you ride around in the car with your kids.
Right. Just have it on my phone and just never listen to it.
Right. Well, this actually came in as a recommendation from Tam back in 2011.
Oh, well, now you have my interest.
A Sailor of Austria, in which, without really intending to, Otto Prohaska becomes official war hero number 27 of the Habsburg Empire.
That's an interesting subhead. Okay.
Well, way back in 2011, Tam recommended this book. It sounded pretty interesting, so I put it on my Amazon wish list, right? And forgot about it. Well, my mother-in-law got it for me for Christmas 2012. Sat right down and read it. I was like, this is great. It's the fictional story of an Austrian U-boat commander during World War I. I didn't know Austro-Hungary had a navy. And I sure didn't know that the Austro-Hungarian Navy had U-boats. And I had no idea what the end of World War I looked like from the perspective of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which, as you know, at the end of World War I ceased to exist.
Right.
And it's a rare book of fiction that leaves you thinking, just a little bit more about the world you live in after you've read it. And this is one of them. I can't really describe it any better than Tam did. Tam says, it's really hard to categorize. The setting is the last days of the patchwork dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary. At turns funny, or absurd, or poignant, or bleak, there's action, and there's enough techno detail of early sub-warfare to please a jaded Clancy fan. Except you actually get, plot and characters too. 2 thumbs up. Well, there's a whole series of them. I have them all. I'm currently reading the prequel, where naval cadet Otto Prohaska is sailing around the world in the early 1900s. It's like the first book, it's hilarious, and it's almost educational. It's like a window on this world that just doesn't exist anymore.
That's very interesting. I guess it's kind of like Star Trek in reverse.
It's just really weird thinking about the world like that. Well, author Larry Correa says that every author should have in his mission statement, get paid. And I'm hoping this author, John Biggins, is getting paid a lot. So help him out by buying his book. The Amazon link is in the show notes. Well, a few Saturdays ago, I got to spend the day with John Richardson of No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money and the Polite Society podcast at the North Carolina stop of SilencerCo's Quiet Riot Tour. We shot silenced rifles, pistols, and even a shotgun. Well, with me today is John Richardson of No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money and the Polite Society podcast. And we're at SilencerCo's Quiet Riot Tour at Carolina Guns and Gear. And I've had a great time today. What do you think, John?
Oh, I had a great time. Everything from shooting a suppressed shotgun to 300 blackout subsonic. It was all fun.
I think the only thing I didn't shoot was the AK.
I think that'd be about the same for me, too.
Right. I wasn't really impressed with the AK. They don't suppress very well, I guess. I don't know.
It didn't seem that way to me. It was the loudest of anything we heard.
And it was supersonic. So.
Even the shotgun.
Yeah, so the idea of suppressed shotguns is completely, that. Nobody thought that could be done, and now they're, selling a commercial shotgun suppressor.
870, Remington 870 pump action. And it has the salvo suppressor.
It's been a while since I shot a 12 gauge.
I mean, other than the fact that it's a little muzzle heavy, it does reduce recoil a bit, especially on a 12 gauge. I had no trouble staying on target. Now, I was aiming at a silhouette rather than shooting clay birds, but,
Yeah, I would have liked to see people who were actually good at shooting clays shoot with it, because that'd be pretty neat. I'd like to see that.
I think that'd be cool. And for a home defense, I think they were saying that it was good down to an 8-inch barrel, so great maneuverability with that.
Yeah, hearing safe all the way down to an 8-inch barrel. Now, that's pretty cool. Now, why do you think SilencerCo is doing this? I mean, they're just like, here, shoot up our ammo. That's kind of expensive.
It is expensive. They're doing it, I think, for a number of reasons. Number one, publicity for the company. Number 2, showing that suppressors are not some weird, exotic thing that you only see in Hollywood and movies, and showing that the average person, if they get a trust, and they're obviously they're pushing their trust, can get a suppressor and afford it.
Want to go rifle or pistol? Okay. Are you familiar with the AR platform?
No.
Okay. I'll give you a little quick rundown on it first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load the weapon for you.
Okay.
It'll be laid on the table. All you got to do is pick it up, take your thumb, and move it to the fire. You'll have 5 rounds. When you get done, just put it back in safety. You set it back on the table. I'll take care of it from there. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load you 5 rounds total. Okay. The first 2 will be subsonic. This will be the ones you can't hardly hear. And the other one will be a supersonic round. That way you can hear the difference. Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. If you would put on a pair of glasses for me, please. All right, the weapon is yours. Do I need to take the safety off for you? There you go.
So.
Just put it back on safe. Put it back on the table. I'll take care of the rest for you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Now, what was your name?
Christopher Kimmel.
And how old are you?
11.
Okay, so what did you think about it?
Cool. It's cool.
Cool. Have you you've never shot an AR-15 before?
No.
And that was a 22 caliber AR-15. What did you think of how quiet it was?
Pretty quiet.
Pretty quiet?
Yeah.
What do you think? You want one of your own?
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think there's a whole lot of, like we do in the gun community, like if you're a little bit leery of guns, we'll put a gun in your hand and teach you how to shoot it. And then you'll say, oh, so that's the reality. Oh, okay, I'm not so scared of it anymore. And it's like inoculating that one person and stopping the spread of the anti-gun disease. I imagine it must work the same way as suppressors.
I would think so. I mean, they're doing it for education more than as much as anything else is the education. Showing the average person, I mean, their location is convenient to Raleigh, to Greensboro, other places in the Triad and Triangle. Big population center. Charlotte is not that far away. Drawing people to a central location and let them go shoot a suppressor, which, oh, wow, I get to shoot a suppressor.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And I didn't have hearing protection on, and my ears don't ring.
Yeah. People who are recoil sensitive, but mostly people who are just muzzle blast sensitive, are going to be much happier shooting. We were shooting a suppressed 300 blackout with subsonic ammunition, and the first thing that both of us thought was, like, we could teach people to shoot with this.
Both these guns are 300 blackout. Okay, safety's on, the EOTech is on.
Okay, so you and I both shot the same one. Those were subsonic 300 blackouts, right?
Correct.
So what did you think of that?
I liked it. I mean, it didn't even feel as much recoil as the 5.56, to me at least.
That's
even
true,
though it was a
yeah.
heavier bullet.
22s aren't that quiet. Suppressed 22s are that quiet, but
it was very quiet.
Yeah, that's if you were going to teach somebody how to shoot with something big and scary like an AR,
that might be
that
the
would be the way to do it.
I think you're right.
It was no big deal. And it was this gigantic AR-15 big scary rifle, but it was like bang, bang, hey, this is cool.
It was bang, bang, minimal recoil. It was not much more than a rimfire. And the sound was no different than the rimfire.
Right, we could hear the bullet going through the cardboard and impacting the berm behind it.
I will say I did have earplugs in because I've had some hearing loss, but other than that, it probably would have been.
I didn't wear hearing protection the entire day, even when I was standing behind the AK, which was way too loud for me to actually want to shoot. So I've had no trouble at all. No big deal.
No, my ears are not ringing any more than normal.
So we got a 22 caliber Browning pistol with a Sparrow 22 caliber can on it. Correct. I'm going to load 5 rounds. 4 rounds will be subsonic. 1 round will be high velocity. That way you can hear the difference between shooting subsonic suppressed and high velocity.
Okay.
Okay, I have loaded the weapon for you. It is on safe. It is ready to go, so you're welcome to take aim and shoot all you like.
So, are you looking to buy yourself a suppressor yet?
Oh, yeah. And what I think I would do is get probably one of the screw-on ones, because tighter connection. And I'd probably get it in a 30 caliber and then try to use it also on like a 5.56. So I could use it on multiple guns.
That's what I have. I have somebody in the area, nbsp.com. They'll sell you anything, SilencerCo, anything you want. So you can get the SilencerCo suppressor from them if you live in North Carolina, obviously. If you don't live in North Carolina, well, you're on your own there. But that was kind of what they said, is that a screw-on suppressor is shorter, is quieter, and is less expensive for general use. And nobody's going to like quick release, so.
And we did get to shoot a lot of different suppressors, virtually every bit of their line. So, and they, 10, 12 different suppressors they have.
Looking in the box that they brought with them, they had 20 slots for suppressors.
Okay. It was more than I thought then.
Right now, they were like multiple of the same multiple of the same one in different calibers. So they had a 45, they had a 40, they had a 9mm in 2 different suppressors. The round one and the vertical one. I cannot remember the names of it.
Kind of like an oblong, square, rectangular, not quite rectangular.
And you shot that one. And you still couldn't see the sights, so you still need suppressor sights on that.
You need suppressor sights on it. I could not. I shot it with a SIG, could not see the sights, but I just kind of, you were using it as silhouette, I just kind of put it in the middle of the silhouette and said, it'll go there.
Yeah, both of us know how to shoot well enough to make that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the really, really, really loud sound we heard was people shooting an AK with a suppressor on it. And as far as I'm understanding, the AKs don't suppress very well. So you shot was that a SIG?
I shot a SIG with the Osprey on it. The only problem I had is it didn't have suppressor front sights, but it sounded like I was shooting a 22.
Right.
A suppressed 22.
Right, and I was shooting the Glock 17 with the Osprey.
Right.
And same problem there. I really couldn't see the sights, but you can figure out where the silhouette is, and you pretty much know you're going to hit it. I mean, at this range, we're shooting at what, 25 yards? 20 yards?
25 yards, yeah.
Right, so really not that hard to hit. And with suppressor sights, we probably do a lot better.
It was still fun.
All right, John, it was good to talk with you. See you again soon.
Same here, Sean. It's been a while, and it's good to see you again.
Read more from John Richardson at onlygunsandmoney.blogspot.com, and you can also hear him on the Polite Society podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio.
Man, I was telling somebody earlier this week about how, like, once you get into suppressors, it's a whole nother level of gun nut.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I can remember very vividly the first time I ever shot suppressors. It was the first time I went out shooting with Oleg, and I was so excited, and I got out there, and I was the only one who didn't have anything suppressed. So I was the reason why people had to wear hearing protection. So I fixed that because it was embarrassing.
I was really happy. I took the Zoom H6 out there and I used the little stereo pickups on it, and I'm pretty happy with how the field recording came out. Fun with headlines.
All right. So this one actually made national news. Small plane catches fire at Nashville International Airport.
Wow, they let small planes fly out of Nashville International?
They do. You can fly Cessnas and Beechcraft and all that stuff out of there. They do have a general aviation area.
But don't be the jerk who catches fire and probably holds up all the other planes, right?
Right. That would not be nice. A small plane caught fire at Nashville International Airport early Friday morning. It happened around 7 a.m. The plane was being moved to the gate so people could board. Well, that's not sounding like a Cessna. When the pilot started the engine and auxiliary power, flames burst out of one of the engines. Pilots cut the power and the fire immediately went out. The plane, which was a SkyWest Airlines flight, was then towed back to the gate. Officials with B&A said the airport is working to get people onto a new plane to Cincinnati. No injuries were reported. So if you look at the picture, that's not a small plane. That's not even a general aviation plane. That was actually a regional jet, a Bombardier CRJ 200, which is 88 feet long, has a 70-foot wingspan, and carries 50 people. Small plane.
Small plane. So you set up a complex password for your email. What good does that do if customer service just hands out the password to anyone who calls them? Barron tells us how a famous author got his email hacked and his Twitter account stolen because customer service was just a little bit too helpful in Tech Tips. Tech Tips. Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with the Barron. So Barron, what lessons have you to share with us this week?
Well, Sean, I saw a fantastic reminder of the weakest point in security.
Oh, really? What's that?
People. The weakest point in any security is people. Yes, there are tons of super awesome technical hacks, methods for remote exploits and privilege escalation, but most every attack needs some sort of foothold in the system. You're going someplace or downloading something that isn't kosher. Someone, somewhere, has to do something.
Okay, and?
You need to remember that for every company involved in your chain of trust, you have added a human contact point which can break. Do you remember Andy Weir?
Yeah, isn't he like the guy that you recommended a book from him recently?
Yep, The Martian. And if you haven't read it, please go do so. The movie's coming out in October, and it looks like it's going to be a good one. But given how well Andy's book has been doing, he's become a bit of a public figure, especially in the geek realm. Well, someone called up Comcast pretending to be him. Comcast asked some very basic security questions and then reset the email password, giving the attacker access.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Don't use the email provided by your internet service provider. This is going to make me feel dirty, but Gmail, Outlook.com, they both actually provide decent two-factor authentication and are a much better solution than relying on your internet service provider's email. It gets worse. Most people use a primary email account for registering for other services such as Facebook, Twitter, domain names, etc.
Oh, I think I know where this is headed.
Yep. The hacker took over Andy's Twitter account. Since the hacker owned the email verification, this was simple and easy.
So what can be done?
This falls largely on companies to update their security practices regarding locked accounts as well as updating account information. There was no real positive identification done by Comcast to verify the person claiming to be Andy was actually Andy. All they did was ask a few questions that can easily be found by about 30 minutes of internet research. Honestly, the hardest part of this would be getting Andy's telephone number or Comcast account number. But again, not impossible, especially if you lived in the area. There are a couple serious notes because this does spill over into financial institutions. There was a Reddit thread I came across where you can set up an out-of-wallet transaction. The thing is they still end up being very, very trivial items such as area code and street address. They need to stop relying on information that really isn't secret. I should be able to create a phrase that I must provide to prove it's me. Barring that, I must go in person and present photo ID, or they could also call me back. Remember, the point of security is to increase the barrier of entry and provide time for attackers to be caught. Right now, we have a bunch of people using obscure information as it is somehow secret. With the advent of modern computers, collecting and correlating obscure information is trivial and easy. A secret must exist only within the mind of the individual.
All right, Barron. It was good to talk with you. See you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
Barron still blogs at the-minuteman.org.
So the most famous hacker of all time, Kevin Mitnick, very rarely was behind a keyboard. He usually just called people and asked them for passwords.
You know, in my job, I found if I show up with a clipboard, hand people a business card, they'll let me see anything I want.
Yep.
The J Block.
So, Sean, did you hear the wonderful news? All of our Tennessee National Guardsmen are going to be carrying pistols now.
Yeah, I saw that. The governor was pretty proud of that. He's going to arm some people, and he's going to let people carry personally owned weapons. And man, I wouldn't want to mess with them.
I know. I was pretty surprised. Our governor, who is a Republican, was actually in Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And actually, when we had park carry passed originally, he lobbied his city council to ban park carry in Knoxville. Not a big Second Amendment kind of guy. So when I saw this, I was, really excited. Well, as John Richardson, yes, the same John Richardson from the special guest, posted today, the devil really is in the details. It turns out that there's only very limited circumstances in which these National Guard folks can actually carry. I'll leave the entire list to him. You can go to the link, but it appears that it doesn't really change anything. Recruiters can't carry in their storefront recruiting stations, right? Because that's federal property, at least backed by the state from the federal government. So the state law doesn't actually trump federal law. Federal law is you can't carry on federal property, can't carry personally owned weapons. The cars that recruiters use are also federally owned property, so they can't carry in the cars. So recruiters, they're in their stations or they're in their cars or they're at high schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally. Well, you're not authorized under any sort of like military action here. You're only authorized under the Tennessee handgun carry permit statutes, which doesn't cover going into schools. John got a hold of the actual documentation for all this, and it lays it all out there. Really, what it ends up being is you're going to be able to carry in the Guard armory. But here's the last kind of final, really what is going on here. You're not allowed to carry with a loaded magazine in the gun.
In fact, the policy as I saw it was you can't have a magazine in the gun at all.
That's true. Yes. You cannot have a magazine in the gun at all.
Yeah. Looking at the policy, there are 3 things that bother me. One is that no magazine in the gun. Okay, so you're carrying a paperweight until you can get it loaded. But better a gun that you have ammo for that you can take a second and load than no gun at all. So there's that.
And I know that they did that in California for a really long time.
Right.
So you can train for that.
Number 2 is that it seems very awkwardly worded that it has to meet the specifications of a Beretta, the M9 Beretta that the Army issues, or smaller, which is a very awkward way to word what they are trying to say, which I can't figure out what they want to say. I mean, I really don't understand what they're trying to say there. It has to meet the specifications of a Beretta. Well, what specifications are they talking about?
So the only thing that I could possibly think of was that they were trying to make sure that people didn't carry AR pistols.
Meet identical or nearly identical specifications of the M9 Beretta service pistol or smaller. What does that mean?
I don't even know.
Let me tell you what's going to happen. I was in the Army. I know how this works. They're going to say, well, M9 Beretta meets the specifications, so that's what you got to carry. And what the next thing it says is the local commander gets to decide what that means.
Right.
So the local commander is going to say, well, you got to carry an M9 Beretta. Well, good luck concealing a double stack 9mm metal gun.
Steel frame. Yeah.
It's going to be tough. And that wasn't the intention that they have to carry a Beretta, because it says you can carry 380, 9mm, 40, or 45.
Right.
Right. So clearly it was not you must carry a Beretta. It just says it must be identical or nearly identical specifications to the Beretta.
However, you're only allowed to carry your personally owned weapon in a holster that is identical to or nearly identical to an issue holster.
Right. That was the third one that bothers me. I remember one issued pistol holster. It was the old OD green flap holster that was intended for you to attach it to a web belt and wear it. I mean, it's the Army. You don't conceal anything in the Army.
Right.
You just wear it on the outside because it's not like you're being sneaky about your carrying a gun. You're in the Army.
Right.
Well, how are you going to conceal that big old giant thing?
And that is one thing I don't think that we've mentioned yet, is that while it's not explicitly stated in the policy, it does appear that the policy is written such that open carry is not allowed.
Right, because you can't carry if you're in a Class B uniform, which is the without the coat on. You take the tie and the coat off and wear a short sleeve shirt, of the dress uniform. You're not allowed to carry in your Army camouflage uniform if you take the top off.
Right.
And a lot of people are thinking, well, the Army, you're not allowed to take. Yes, there are circumstances where you're authorized to work. Like if you're digging a hole outside, they can tell you to take your shirt off and just work in short sleeves.
Or putting up sandbags.
Right. Now, that doesn't bother me so much because we know what the Army's going to do. the sergeant who's not going to pick up a shovel in the first place, who's going to stand there and supervise with his ACU top on and his concealed handgun, and the guys are going to pick up shovels and dig the hole they have to dig.
Right.
A lot of the other stuff, there's nothing that can be done about it. It's federal property. State law cannot change that. But it does put a lot of people on the wrong side of federal policy. People who would ordinarily be saying, here's the policy, we have to follow it, are going to be saying this policy is stupid. And I know there's a lot made of it in the military. Well, there's chain of command. You got to do what you're told. You can only give a stupid order so many times before people stop showing up. And this is the National Guard. They don't have to be there.
Right.
They're not there for the money.
No.
As soon as their enlistment's over with, and they're only there on weekends once a month, they can stick it out till the end of their enlistment and say bye-bye. And then what are they going to do? Where are they going to find people? And in our modern world, we use our National Guard. We deploy them to war zones. They are an integral part of the military service. When I was in the National Guard, the idea that the National Guard would have been deployed anywhere was a no. And then Desert Storm happened. Well, I joined the active army and went to Desert Storm. A lot of these units were activated and sent to training, and there were reserve units that went overseas. None of the National Guard units did. But in the most recent Gulf War, a lot of National Guard units went overseas, did full tours. So they need these people. I think things are going to change, and this is one way to start. The other thing that you talked about, you can't carry in a school, you can't carry in federal property, you can't carry in the vehicles that are federal property. There's a simple solution to that. And Governor Haslam said in another article that we found that they were going to arm on-duty military members with issued weapons.
Selected.
Yes, not all of them.
Right.
But that right there is how it changes, because you looked it up. What's the law in Tennessee say about military members carrying weapons in schools?
It says subsections B and C do not apply to the following persons. And B and C, this is in the portion of Tennessee law that bans carry on school property. Persons employed in the Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, or Marine Service of the United States, or any member of the Tennessee National Guard when in discharge of their official duties and acting under orders requiring them to carry arms or weapons.
Right. Now, you don't get told, hey, this is the Army. You can carry a weapon if you like. Would you like to draw your weapon and carry it around? Or would you like to leave it in the arms room? It's okay. Now, they can tell you your personal weapon, it's optional. You can if you like, but we're not going to make you. But when they tell you to go get your rifle or your pistol, that's an order. So there you go. All the governor has to do, this was the adjutant general of the Tennessee National Guard that put out the policy.
Yes.
All he has to do is say, recruiters, E6 and above, qualified with an M9, E5 and above, qualified with an M9. They're all senior. They're all NCOs. They're not privates that are doing this. You're authorized, order your people to arm. Now they can carry on federal property. They can carry in federal vehicles. They can carry in schools. Boom, cut, dried, end of story. Now, will Governor Haslam have the intestinal fortitude to do that? I don't know. Maybe a little pressure.
It's hard for me to think that wasn't like the first thing out of the lawyers' mouths when he asked for, hey, what can we do? Well, just, order them to carry guns, and then they can,
yeah, be carried anywhere they like.
They can do whatever, right?
I mean who's going to complain? Who's going to say, "Hey, that's terrible. You in your army uniform carrying an army gun. That's wrong."
There are people who say, "Well, we really shouldn't arm them." I'm like, "Why?" Well, you can't. Not all of them are really trustworthy. I'm sorry, if you can't trust an E5 with a gun, you can't trust him to be an E5.
Yeah. Seriously. That says a whole lot about some people.
Yes.
And now a word from our sponsor. You know what will happen. If you ever have to defend yourself, you're going to end up in handcuffs. Are you trained to win the fight after the fight? Sure, you can draw, aim, and put 2 in the 10 ring, but have you learned your legal self-defense? Do you know the law? Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for your legal self-defense class. Each class is tailored to the laws in your state. Attorney Andrew Branco will teach you the law, not just what the law says, but what the judge's legal opinions say, what the jury instructions say. Sure, you could risk spending the rest of your life in prison because you followed the advice of some gun store counter jockey, or you could spend the day with the man who literally wrote the book on the law of self-defense. Carry a gun so you're hard to kill. Know the law so you're hard to convict. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for a legal self-defense class in your state. And make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to receive 10% off. And don't forget that we're still accepting donations at gofundme.com/GunBlog VarietyCast. Every little bit helps towards getting us some better audio equipment. Well, in the aftermath of the Louisiana Theater non-mass shooting, PMS-NBC went wall-to-wall anti-gun. Weird takes on two of them, Rachel Maddow and Al Sharpton, in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. Well, hey, Weird, what do you got this week?
In the wake of the horrible shooting at the Louisiana movie theater, the anti-gun talking heads are at it again. So why don't we start with Rachel Maddow?
So there is new information that we have just learned about the shooting attack in Lafayette, Louisiana last night. We now know what kind of gun the shooter used to commit the attack. Police say it was a .40 caliber high-point semi-automatic handgun. We also now know that the gunman had 2 10-round magazines for that gun.
So here's the first failure of gun control. The shooter did not use an AR-15. He did not use a Glock with an extended magazine. He used a POS high-point pistol with a nasty trigger pull, crappy blowback action, and a snappy caliber. And he only had 1 spare magazine that likely came with the gun in the first place. No slicing of the gun pie would have made this gun illegal.
In terms of the shooter, we learned 2 interesting and as yet not fully explained things about him today. The first is his recent and extensive online activity and apparently radical political views, which honestly may or may not have had something to do with why he committed this crime, but we're learning more about it now.
This may or may not have had anything to do with why he committed this crime, but we know what Rachel wants. She wants this to be the first spree killer we've had who is an honest-to-goodness Republican. Honestly, the speculation is fair game. We've been rubbing it in the left's nose, the fact that the recent spree shooters have had tenuous ties to the progressive politics and left-leaning ideology. In all honesty, we're both wrong. Crazy people are going to be crazy, and us sane people who often paint the opposition as insane are quick to look for ties and strain to make them fit.
But the other important thing we learned today about the shooter concerns his apparent history of mental illness and how he was able to obtain the gun he used to kill those people last night. We learned from court records today that in 2008, his family obtained a protective order against him. As part of that process, a probate judge in Georgia had this man involuntarily committed. He had him sent against his will to a hospital in Columbus, Georgia. One thing about our country's very, very loose gun laws is that federal background checks are supposed to prevent you from being able to purchase a gun if you've been adjudicated mentally ill by a court of law.
So this is gun control law failure number 2. This guy was a certified grade A nut with all the appropriate authorities. He bought the gun legally from a pawn shop, and as a Type 02 FFL, a background check was conducted and passed. Nobody's opposed to fixing the shortcomings with the NICS system. The last and likely final victory of the Brady campaign was the passage of the NICS Improvement Act, a law backed by the NRA. Still, the antis keep calling for more laws rather than fixing the broken ones first.
He was turned down for a concealed carry permit in that county a couple of years prior to treatment for mental illness because of other arrests.
So this is pointless drivel. Alabama at the time was a May issue state, so the fact that he was turned down for a permit has zero relevance because he could have been turned down for any reason. All right, now let's go on to Al Sharpton.
In fact, USA Today put together this map. Since 2006, there's been 211 mass shootings in the United States. That's when 4 more people were killed.
So wait, by your own cited definition, this was not a mass shooting. Yet this is national news. But you're claiming there are hundreds of more mass shootings than what we've ever heard of. This is misdirection to inflate a problem we see with a problem we already understand, which is gang-related killings. We don't conflate the two events, but the antis need us to.
How do we stop these things from reoccurring so to the point where it's almost looked upon as this is the price we paid for freedom?
Well, it seems that all of these shootings are at gun-free zones. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it doesn't. But the fact is we keep seeing this correlation. Maybe it's time to start getting rid of these stupid signs and policies. Al then asks E.J. Dion to weigh in.
We need to have the same attitude toward guns, develop the same attitude toward guns that we have toward smoking or drunk driving. Guns don't make a home safe. Guns don't make us safer. And we've got to start changing the public view on this in order eventually to change the law so we don't have maps like that in 10 years.
So it's pretty interesting that E.J. Dionne can say that guns in the home don't make you safer, while gun ownership is going up, and violent crime is going down, and accidental death by firearms is practically non-existent.
You know, I heard it said earlier that some on the right have said everybody has a gun that stops, but if everyone had a gun in that movie house last night, it possibly could have caused more deaths. I mean, how do you defend yourself against a guy operating lone wolf that you don't expect to do anything? Guns, I don't feel, is the answer. I happen to, deep down, feel that they are really the problem.
First up, Al, there's never been a situation where a lawfully armed person responded to an armed violent attacker and made the situation worse. Never. There have also not been lawfully armed people shot by responding police in confusion, just in case you wanted to drag out that straw man too. They've never happened. And your last line is the truth for anti-gunners. They do this on feelings, and feelings don't have to be true. And they are not true when they fly in the face of facts. These guys are anti-freedom, not anti-gun.
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. See you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host at The Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
So, on a personal note, the older female victim in that shooting, Jillian Johnson, was actually a childhood friend of mine. So, I'm very personally interested in this particular case. I do not believe that had I been there, in the row behind him with my pistol, I don't believe that I could have stopped that. Not the first one, probably not the second round. But he wouldn't have gotten any further than that. I do know that no guns allowed sign certainly didn't stop it.
That's true. Stuff that grinds my gears. People who think that a baseball bat doesn't constitute deadly force. So I have this Facebook friend who I really wish owned a computer so we could have him on the show.
Wait. He's on Facebook, but he doesn't have a computer.
He's got a cell phone.
Okay.
He doesn't have a great deal of money, so he can't go out and buy himself a new computer. But, oh my God, he's got some of the funniest open carry stories. So he gets into a Facebook argument with some anti-gun guy. So, you're telling me you'd shoot a guy who came at you with a baseball bat? My friend. Yes. Anti-gun guy. You're a pussy. What's wrong with you? It's not like the guy has a gun. It's a f***ing stick. Let that sink in for a while.
Yeah. So usually when somebody says something like that, I say, okay, let me get my stick and you meet me in front of my house and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? One of the problems with actually knowing something about actual self-defense law is that the sort of person who tries to tell you that you're doing it wrong doesn't have any idea what the law says. He still thinks you can only use a gun on somebody who has a gun. Apparently, there's some rule that if a guy pulls out a bat, I'm supposed to pull out my own bat and try to play Knights of the Round Table with him on the street. Nope, not gonna happen. If you put me in reasonable fear of death, serious bodily injury, or sexual assault, I'm gonna do my best to put a bullet in you. And I don't care if you're using a gun or not, because it's the law. Wouldn't it be nice if some of these people actually learned what the law said before they tried to tell me that I'm doing it wrong?
And I will tell you, I actually have made that offer on multiple occasions. Particularly during the Trayvon Martin thing. It's like, okay, well, how about you lay down on the sidewalk and I bash your head in, and then you tell me at what point that you feel threatened enough that you would have shot me. No takers, ever.
Surprisingly. What about you, Adam?
So this has happened a couple of times in the last few years. I went to a big box construction store that rhymes with Home Depot, and I went in literally to buy a light bulb, okay? A single light bulb that had gone out in my house. And I am met 5 or 10 feet in the door with a lady with a clipboard. And she says, "Oh, hi, how are you doing today? We're giving out free estimates for..." And I just stopped her. Like, I didn't even look at her. I just waved my hand and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm just here for a light bulb. I don't also need a kitchen." The last time that this happened to me, I was in a different large store that runs with Lowe's and looking at like electrical outlets or something and got the same offer. And I just turned around, I looked, and I was like, wouldn't this be easier for you to be trolling like the plumbing section, perhaps? I'm buying a light switch. I don't also need a bathroom or a new deck. Go away.
Funny enough, my father used to do the kitchen remodel planning at Home Depot.
Right, they have a desk.
Yeah.
You go to the desk.
And he sat at the desk.
Yes, I did this when I got new flooring. And when I got a new bathroom, I went to the desk. It's like, oh, yes, I was here for this $3 item. Why, yes, I do want to spend $20,000.
Why not?
Oh, my God, just stop. I'm going to get thrown out of one of these stores one time because I'm just going to like light into this person. And it's always, you know, this 25-year-old woman who's like 5 feet tall every single time.
There's this phrase I learned when I was really young. Works pretty well in that situation.
Go away?
No, it's no thank you.
Oh.
You could try it.
I'm too pissed off for that.
Well, that's our show for the week. Thanks again to Rob Allen for our music, and thank you for listening to the GunBlog VarietyCast. Constructive criticism can be sent to Sean at SeanSorrentino.com and hate mail to WizardPC at GunsCarsTech.com. Show notes can be found at GunBlogVarietyCast.com/episode 51.